I'm Anne Marie Battistone. You're watching another edition of State and Local. I have another candidate today, and that would be Brad Williams, who is running for Governor's Council. So he's going to tell us a little bit about Governor's Council, about himself, and what his plans are for the campaign. So I'm so glad that you could come and be with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Now, why don't you tell us something about yourself first?
Well, myself, so I live in Boston in the West Roxbury neighborhood. I've lived there for over 20 years now. I bought a house there when I was 24 years old.
That's an accomplishment.
Well, it was a lot easier then than it is today.
Well,
Things were a lot cheaper. But I moved there after I graduated from Middlebury College in 1993. I later worked full-time and went to school part-time and earned an MBA at Northeastern in Boston, and then I've been in the investment industry ever since. And 2 years ago, I founded my own firm. It's an independently owned by my partner and myself wealth management firm, and we work with people just like yourself and a lot of people right here in Norfolk. And I mean, really, our guiding principle has been to take sophisticated institutional money management and bring it down so that individuals and families can benefit from those same strategies that endowments and pension plans use.
Now you're a Republican, and I'm guessing that Governor's Council is pretty heavily Democrat.
Right. So there are 8 governor's councilors. Right now, 7 are Democrats. 1 is a Republican.
That's a woman, right?
Jen Casey.
Yeah.
And there have been as many as 2 or 3 in the past. But right now there's just 1.
Now you don't have an opponent for there's nobody running against you as a primary.
Right.
Candidate. And your opponent is Jubenville?
Bob Jubenville,
okay.
Democrat.
Now tell us about the Governor's Council, because I think most people don't really know what they do.
Right. So the Governor's Council is a little known but very important part of our state government. The primary responsibility of the Governor's Council is approving judicial nominees to the higher courts. It goes back to colonial times when the governor of the colonies was appointed by the British Crown, and there was a citizens' council to approve certain things that the governor was doing. And the Governor's Council is in our state constitution today and in New Hampshire state constitution. And actually, at one point, the Governor's Council was actually in the line of succession if the governor and lieutenant governor couldn't serve.
Huh. So what's involved in screening those judges? I mean, they're nominated by the governor.
Right.
And then is it done as a group? Do you meet as a group and they come before you, or do you work individually with them? How is that done?
Right. So let's go back. First, if you're going to be a judge, there's a judicial nominating committee appointed by the governor, and they do the due diligence for the administration. They collect the data, talk to nominees, and then the governor picks nominees for the courts, and then those names are submitted to the Governor's Council. It's very typical for the most important judgeships that I would meet with judges one-on-one, but there's also a public hearing. The Governor's Council meets Wednesdays at noon at the State House. Some meetings are short, some meetings are long. And if you know where my office is about 100 yards from the State House, so I'll never miss a meeting.
Now, it seems to me that the judges in Massachusetts are very, very left-leaning. Has that have anything to do with the way the Governor's Council approved them, or do you merely look at credentials?
Really, the purview of the Governor's Council is more to look at credentials and make sure they're qualified. The decision on who to nominate really is in the hands of the governor. So it was Deval Patrick for 8 years. Maybe that's when you're talking about a more left-leaning judiciary. And now Charlie Baker has the chance to appoint judges and nominate them before the Governor's Council. I mean, one thing to think about right here is that Governor Baker right now is in the middle of his first term, and during his first term, he will have the ability or the opportunity to appoint 5 of our Supreme.
I was just going to ask you that.
5 Supreme Judicial Court
is that right?
Judges. So he's already done 3.
5 have left?
Well, there's a mandatory retirement age at age 70.
Oh, okay.
So he's already done 3, and then he has 2 more in the next 2 years of his term. So Charlie Baker will really be able to put his stamp on the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, because during his first term he will have appointed 5 of 7 of the justices.
Oh my goodness.
So this is an important, the Governor's Council does important work, and part of the important work right now involves our state Supreme Court.
But do you have anything to do with any of the judges below the Supreme Court?
Yes, there are other higher courts, some of the town courts and things like that.
Right.
No, but the higher courts in the state, yes.
Now, how did you become interested in wanting to get involved in this and become and go on the Governor's Council?
Well, I mean, I think it's a couple of things you alluded to, that the judiciary is a very important part of our state government, and we really do want to ensure that they're thinking about public safety. We had a lot of us who aren't in the judiciary are scratching our heads often at some of their decisions, and we've had quite a few examples of criminals that the public criminals that the public thinks should be in jail out on the streets and sometimes committing pretty horrific crimes. I mean, Officer Tarantino's murder in I believe Auburn comes to mind right away, and the public scratching their heads saying, isn't that somebody who should be in jail? So public safety is very, very important. I live in a part of Boston where we have a lot of police and fire and first responders and a lot of people who work for the DA's office, and so that's very important. Public safety is important, and that should really be, I think, the number one responsibility when you're looking at judges. Do they understand public safety? The other thing I think that's very important is the integrity, and that's sort of what you were alluding to. Are they left? Are they right? We don't really want judges bringing their own partisan views,
and they do tremendously so.
To the bench.
I mean,
So I think part of my job is looking at nominees, saying, do they have an agenda? Do they have litmus tests? How are they going to apply the laws of the Constitution, of the state Constitution, fairly, objectively, and look at precedent?
Now, you mentioned looking at their credentials, but wouldn't Governor Baker have already looked at that before he puts their name up?
Yes, I mean, the state Constitution, the actual phrase is that the Governor's Council is there to advise and give consent to the governor. So I think reviewing the work the nominating committee has done is part of it. And then, as I said, often governor's counselors will interview nominees both before the public hearing, and then at the public hearing you can ask questions and get their answers on record.
Mm-hmm. Now, the district is kind of unusual. And I'm just going to read here. I have his. Well, he's going to get a new one, but I happen to have this from last night. Just grabbed it. But it's Bristol County, Middlesex, Norfolk, Plymouth, and Suffolk. So it's I find it very confusing, because you have the state Senate districts, and you have the reps, the representatives districts, and now does this overlap?
So
some of the other districts, or
right. So the governor's council districts. Each district is 5 contiguous state Senate districts. Oh. So there is rhyme and reason to it. As much as state Senate districts make sense, this will make sense. So it's 5 contiguous state Senate districts. But you're right, this covers 5 counties, primarily Norfolk County, but pieces of Bristol, Middlesex.
And not even all the precincts either. It says Eastern Precincts 3 through 6. And Braintree, precincts 1 and 2. And
that's the way the state Senate district lines are drawn. Oh. So Braintree is split. You mentioned Easton is split. Wellesley is split.
Were those historic lines that were drawn, and then as the towns, configured themselves a little differently?
No, the district lines are drawn after the census every 10 years. There's a redistricting committee in Massachusetts, and they redraw the lines of each district. So I think state rep districts might have state rep districts that might have 40,000 or 60,000 people, and then each state Senate districts have a multiple of that.
Oh, I see.
But they do cut through town sometimes, and it's a little maddening. I mean, our friends in Walpole have 4 state reps and
Yes, isn't that the crazy?
2 state senators. So it's it's a little crazy.
Now, what are you planning as far as your campaign goes?
Well, campaigning. So we're. You saw me last night. We're out at events. I'm out at events, shaking hands, meeting the voters all over the district. Last night I was in Easton and Norwood. Tonight I'll be in West Roxbury in my home part of the district. There's a candidate forum for some Suffolk County offices, so I'll be there meeting voters. So we're out meeting voters. We're doing events like this as often as we can, talking to Republican groups, talking to other groups. So we're just trying to be out there as much as we can be.
Do you know if there are any events planned yet? Any kind of fundraising event? Maybe anybody is going to have you at their house or have something at a VFW hall that they're going to sponsor, anything like that yet?
Well, the big one I guess we should talk about is Norfolk County's doing a big rally for candidates on October 6th.
That's right, yeah.
I think in Randolph at
Lombardo's.
Lombardo's. And there are some more private fundraisers for that kind of thing, but I'm not going to necessarily invite everybody to those.
Right. And then as your campaign goes along, people will have coffees for you and that sort of thing.
Yep, we're doing coffees. I mean, yesterday was a big day in the campaign. As you may know, Governor Baker endorsed my candidacy.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And so that's really, really important. Governor Baker is at 75% approval rating right now in the state, which means almost every Republican, of course, approves, but that's only 12% of the state. That means most independent voters are approving.
Well, I think so, yes.
And probably a third of Democrats approve of the job that Governor Baker's doing. So getting his endorsement.
To get to that point, it would have to be something like that.
It's very critical. And he's been a leader on a lot of issues. And I think people are responding to, he talks about thrifty, good government that works for all citizens. And I think people are really responding to that right now.
Now, have you ever run for office before? Is this sort of are you a neophyte in this?
Well, I ran for state senate in 2010. But I mean, you learn so much from every campaign you run that today, when I look back on that, I have to say I knew almost nothing then. But it was a great learning experience. That state senate district I ran in is part of this district.
Which one was that now?
So, well, it was Boston, where I live, West Roxbury, Hyde Park, and Roslindale. Right. And then at the time, that district was Norwood, Dedham, and Westwood.
Oh, all right. Now, if you've looked at what's been going on with the Governor's Council, is there anything that you might have? Do you have any analysis of some things that have gone on that you felt could have been done better?
Well, there are usually when the Governor's Council makes the news, it's because they voted down a nominee or there was a tight vote. And August 3rd, there was a perfect example of a vote. And the way the council works is you have the 8 councilors, so if it's a 4-4 tie, the lieutenant governor who serves ex officio breaks the tie. But she had used her constitutional privilege to run that meeting on August 3rd, so she couldn't vote. But she knew, so if you're presiding, you actually can't vote the way it's drawn up. But so she knew there was going to be a 4-4 vote to approve a judge to the Falmouth District Court. And so she called a recess and went and found Charlie Baker in the State House and got him to that meeting so he could break the tie to get that judge approved in the Falmouth District Court. So you do see times when the Governor's Council makes the news. It's usually if they vote down a nominee or something like that happens, where it's a tight vote and either Lieutenant Governor Polito or Governor Baker will come and break the tie.
Did you all adjourn at that point, or?
Well, she called a recess.
Yeah.
I've been staying.
I meant a recess.
Yeah, she called a recess, and they went and got the governor to come in and break the tie. Now, I haven't been attending the most recent meetings because I don't want to politicize it right now when we have those 3 Supreme Judicial Court nominees in front of the Governor's Council. I didn't want to be a distraction.
Are those open to the public?
They are. Wednesdays at noon. There's a special Governor's Council chamber at the State House.
Now, tell us something about what do you feel is important in that, as far as being on the Governor's Council, as far as your sort of worldview or your values in terms of making good decisions?
Well, I mean, I already talked about 2 things. One is, I think the job of any part of our government is public safety first. And then the second thing I mentioned already is The integrity of the judicial system is at stake every time we appoint a judge. And we need judges that only uphold the highest standards and are impartial and objective, follow the state constitution, and keep public safety in mind. Now, there's a third reason I'm running, which we haven't talked about yet, which is my opponent, the incumbent, has made some statements about heroin that just most voters think are absurd.
I think Howie Carr was talking about that.
Well, Howie Carr's talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. And last summer, Governor Baker and the legislature and Mayor Walsh in Boston, everybody basically was working on that opioid bill to help keep opioids out of the public mainstream.
He's gotten some national attention on that, hasn't he?
Well, right. So eventually the bill was passed, and through the National Governors Association, Baker was serving on the Health and Human Services Committee, and for the first time in 10 years, there's a governor's compact of 48 governors signing on to the Massachusetts plan for fighting opioids. And this is Percocet and OxyContin, what people get after knee surgeries and that kind of thing.
Now, how is that supposed to work? Do you know anything about how that's supposed to?
So the foundation of the bill in Massachusetts is that when you get a prescription, you now only get 7 days worth of pills because they're highly addictive.
Right.
And I know from my own father's own knee replacement, I went and picked up his prescription. He got 100 pills.
Me too. When I went home, they had a whole card.
Right.
Of them, and that was only a few years ago.
And so we're going to limit the number of pills we're putting out into the public, and a 7-day prescription will be the starting point. And that's common sense. That's what Governor Baker is about. That's a common sense reform. Everybody knows it had to be done. 48 other states have signed on to it. But in the middle of that last summer, my opponent hand-delivered a letter to Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, saying, I think the way to fight this is to decriminalize heroin. Or we really should be saying, he's saying legalize it for users and heroin addicts and people most at risk from being hurt by it.
And then who's supposed to pick up the tab for all the treatment that they're going to need?
Well, that was part of his proposal that really didn't make sense either, is that he actually said we should be putting treatment centers, methadone clinics in courthouses. In courthouses. So it was a non-starter as a proposal.
But aren't they usually in neighborhoods? So people that live around there can get to those?
Right. I mean, they're putting it. I mean, his view is that if you're in the courthouse and you're an addict, you can be diverted immediately to a program right in the courthouse instead of going through the judicial system for whatever crimes you're there for. But we have to be clear. We all understand addiction is a disease now. We need to have compassion for the addicts, but there's no law enforcement agency, there's nobody really in a position of power that says legalizing heroin is a good idea. Actually, other governors, counselors on the council said immediately, one who was a former police chief in Somerset immediately said, no, that's not a good idea.
Now, who would this proposal have gone to?
Well, he hand-delivered it to the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office.
So was that something that would have been eventually had legs go through the legislature?
Well, that's a great point. That I want to do the job of governor's council. If you want to work on things like decriminalizing heroin, legalizing heroin, you should run for state rep or state senate and go through the legislative office. I mean, the role of the governor's council is not to be making laws, not to be proposing things that you think should be laws. If that's what you want to do, run for state rep, run for state senate.
So is it going anywhere? Do you know anything about what's happened to this proposal? Is it just going to kind of fizzle away, do you think? Or
It basically has fizzled away. I mean, I think we're going to talk about it during this campaign because it goes to, do you want to do the job of governor's counselor? Do voters think that is a very troublesome stance to take? I mean, heroin is not a gateway drug.
No, right.
Opioids are not a gateway drug anymore. We're realizing that they are really part of the problem. We're not talking about marijuana. We're talking about heroin. And it's a very different dynamic. It's a very different judgment. And I mean, I can tell you from meeting voters all over the district that people react to it just the way you did, which is, are you kidding me? We can't legalize heroin.
Well, they've got to also go after these doctors that do this prescribing.
Yes.
Because I bet there's people around the state that they know who to go to.
Right.
And then, of course, they sell the prescriptions, and it goes that way, or they go to do 2 or 3 of these different people. I mean, that's...
Right. There's been a lot written about pill factories, the pharmacies that just dispense these pills, but it's really a problem at the doctor's level. Somebody's writing fraudulent prescriptions, and that's what the Massachusetts model will take care of, is that now a prescription is only worth 7 days of the drug.
Or people who legitimately got them but then turn around, don't use them, and sell them because they need the money.
Right, that's
and
right.
I'm sure they go for quite a bit per pill. Well, all right, I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can mention here. Now, what was your major at Middlebury?
So while I was an economics major, which is not surprising because I'm in the investment industry, and then also which is more unusual, was Middlebury has an excellent
they're very big on that.
environmental studies program.
So what was that? You were relating economics with environmental programs and...
Right, and actually what we did in environmental economics is similar to what you do with any problem, whether it's heroin. Is environmental economics was you do cost-benefit analysis. We could have zero pollution if we wanted to pay enough to mitigate it. What you try to do is find the solutions that make sense financially.
Well, all the regulations with the EPA, how it's affected different businesses and so forth. I mean, that's
what the EPA's business is. They are
Right.
trying to decide what can we spend to get the most benefit from something, and can we quantify it? I remember Middlebury's in Vermont, and one of the classic studies when I was in college was, if we have acid rain in Vermont from smokestacks in the Midwest, can we quantify a dollar amount of damage in Vermont? Because that way we know how to regulate them in the Midwest. So you try to, you could say, well, we won't have any acid rain in New England if we have no smokestacks in the Midwest, but that's
Right.
not realistic, obviously.
Right.
So you try to find that middle ground of using cost-benefit analysis, and that's no different than opioids or any of these other problems we face. We had a problem with opioids being prescribed, and we said, well, some people need them, obviously. How do we allow those people to have them with the least amount of impact to the rest of society? So let's start off with a 7-day prescription and see how that goes.
Now, do you think there'll be any debates between you and Mr. Juvenville?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think most voters would love to hear us talk about.
Is he opposed? Does he have a primary?
No.
Okay.
No.
So it's pretty clear.
But I mean, wouldn't it be great TV or to have a debate on legalizing heroin? I don't think most people. I think most people would like to see that.
Well, I think unless you have talking about people that are extremely liberal in that way, in that viewpoint.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, I think a
Well-
lot of people are very worried about it. See, I thought New Hampshire was in a worse state than we are as far as the opioid addictions. But I think I heard you say that Massachusetts is very high.
Massachusetts, if we're not the worst state, we're one of the worst. Our death rate from heroin is twice the national average.
Good Lord.
It has really, really hurt Massachusetts. I mean, this is a priority, and I think the governors...
Despite all the doctors that are here. I mean, we do have more doctors in hospitals than a lot of other states have,
Right.
But these are people that are not going and getting treatment or not...
Right, and the thing about heroin is that a lot of people have turned to heroin because we did do a successful job of cutting off the opioids, the Percocets and the OxyContins. We have stopped some of the pill factories and the abuse in prescriptions, and now those people, heroin is so cheap on the streets that when they can't get their opioid, whatever it was, now they're turning to heroin. It's too cheap. So,
Right.
I mean, that's the one thing. The price of heroin has come down. The potency, the toxicity of heroin is much, much higher.
And so with the marijuana as well now.
Right.
Than from 20 years ago or
well,
even.
One thing on heroin is that fentanyl is being introduced into the heroin supply, and fentanyl is much more potent than heroin. And unlike heroin, which comes from poppy seeds in Afghanistan, largely, fentanyl is made in Mexican drug labs.
I didn't know that.
So we have the Mexican drug cartels and drug crime families introducing fentanyl into our heroin supply, and And what happens is you get some fentanyl and heroin, and it's especially for people who maybe don't use it. I mean, you've probably read about some of these cases where somebody uses heroin once or twice and dies. That's usually that's fentanyl getting cut into the heroin. And it actually reminds me, when I was in college, and you probably remember this, we had the exact same argument and problem with crack cocaine. And the answer then was not to legalize crack cocaine,
exactly.
but to fight it and to give treatment to those who need it, but to fight it and say this is not a drug that can be out on the streets of America.
Now, you said that now, I just want to ask one quick question. We're at the end here, but did you become interested in this because your observation of the way judges were deciding cases in Massachusetts? What inspired you to go here rather than have another try at state rep?
Well, I ran for state senate, but
I'm sorry.
Same idea. But I also have a much more full-time job now. But I do want to. I've always believed in public service. I was back when I was a Boy Scout. I was an Eagle Scout, and to be an Eagle Scout, you have to do a public service project.
Yeah.
And of course, when you live in Boston, everything's appointed by the mayor, so you can't run for anything. You can't run for school committee or finance committee or the museum committee.
A lot of control.
So this is one way I can give back to the state, and I believe in public service. I believe we can do. Improve the judiciary over time. I think Governor Baker's made a lot of steps with the judges he's been appointing. Now,
is this contest that you have is this the only one in the Governor's Council? Is this the only challenge?
No, there are a number of governor's councilor seats being challenged.
Okay.
Both the Republican is being challenged by a Democrat. I believe there's some other there's another Republican running, but it's a big district. And it's a big challenge because of the number of voters and the size of the district. So, we are raising money. I encourage your viewers to go to bradwilliamsma.com, read more about me, read more about the campaign. People can donate there if they're so inclined.
Well, listen, good luck to you.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for coming on. And maybe if there are any debates, maybe we can get those covered for you.
Well, I know we have. There is a voter night or I guess I should say candidate night in Ashland on September 6th. I'll be there.
Okay.
And then in Norwood, there's a League of Women Voters candidate night too.
Right.
So Norwood isn't too far away. Ashland isn't that far away.
No, it isn't.
But so those are two dates: the 6th and later in October.
Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Brad. And
thank you. Thanks for
having
having me.
It's great to have you.
Nice
You're welcome.
Nice to be in Norfolk.
And thanks for watching State and Local. I'm Anne Marie Battistone, and this is Norfolk Public Access.